Chris in Boise. In this video we're going to show you how to remove a rear wheel cassette on a road bike. In this task we're going to be using three tools. One of them is a chain whip. The next one is a lock nut tool, which is by Park Tools. It's an FR-5 tool that's for Shimano cassette. We're also using a large crescent wrench that is going to be large enough to go over the top and unscrew with that FR5 Park Tools lock ring tool. To start this task, we're going to be removing the rear wheel to get access to the cassette, and to make it just a little bit easier to get the rear wheel off, we want to shift it down to the lowest cog, which is the highest gear. We're going to take and make sure the bike is shifted all the way down to that lowest cog. Makes it easier to get the rear wheel off. We're going to want to flip up the quick release lever on the brake, and that separates the brake so the wheel could drop out easier. Now we're just going to flip our skewer out. We're going to pull back on the derailleur, and the wheel will just drop right out. Now we've got a wheel right in front of us. We're going to be removing this rear wheel cassette. In order to get to the cassette, we've actually got to take the skewer off. We're going to pull this skewer off. There's a spring. We want to make sure we don't drop that spring. Grab the spring. There's a spring on the other side of the skewer. We're going to stick that spring back on. It actually goes on the skewer. It's a little cone-shaped spring, and the small portion goes on the skewer first. And then we'll screw this back together so we don't lose the nut. Set our skewer aside. Now we'll get our three tools to take this cassette off. I just set the cassette down in front of me. I'm going to take this tool, this Park Tools FR5 Shimano lock ring tool, and it's got little splines on it. It's going to just correspond to the grooves on the lock ring. It's just going to slide right in there. We'll put our cassette crescent wrench right there, get it locked and ready. We're going to put our chain whip tool right over the cassette. That's what's going to hold the cassette from actually spinning while we're actually trying to unscrew it. You want to get the chain so it's actually engaged. Once it engages, it locks. You just push opposite directions. I'll be pushing down. Now it'll just unscrew. Once it's loose enough, you can just unscrew the rest of the way by hand. Now we've got the lock ring right here in a hand. We'll slide off the cassette, hold all the pieces. There's on Mavic wheels, there's a spacer there. We just set our wheel down, leave that spacer there. We won't be needing the chain whip. We'll set that aside. We'll be using our crescent wrench and lock ring tool to put it back on. Now I want to make sure when I pull these things apart, you want to take a look at them, make sure you understand how they go back together. This is a Dura-Ace cassette, and there's two black spacers. And those two black spacers will show you where those actually go. So now what I want to do is I'm going to put it back together. I got all my parts. I'm going to take my wheel. You're going to take the largest ring first, and there's a large portion of a groove right here, and then there's evenly sized ones the rest of the way around. And it'll only go on one way. You'll find that large groove. It'll actually slide down. It won't slide down any other way till that large groove lines up. If it's flipped over opposite direction, it won't go in either. So get it down to where that large groove will slide down, large slot, go to the next chain ring, get to where it just slides down, next largest chain ring, and it'll just slide down. If I flip it over opposite direction, it actually won't fit at no point in time at all. So I slide it down. When I get to the next one, this one, you'll slide it down. And you'll notice it's actually completely flat, and that's where the spacer comes in. This black spacer on a Shimano cassette, you just twirl around to actually fall in place, and no matter how it falls in, it's just fine. So now we can put on the next ring. Won't go on that side. Slaps right in. The spacer goes in the next one. Just keep twirling around till they'll drop in place. And then our last three rings, have spacers on them already built on, so those will just slide in place. Slide right on. Then you got your last one. Line that large groove up. That last one. Then we just take our lock ring, set our lock ring right in place. We're going to grab our FR5 Park Tools lock ring tool, and we'll just start to screw that back on by hand. Once it's on snug by hand, I just take my crescent wrench, and now I'm going to take and tighten this snugly, get it to the point where it's fairly tight, and you can actually feel it actually bump as it actually starts to begin to tighten. And then I'm going to take one pull, make it nice and snug. Set those tools aside. I'm going to take my skewer and put my skewer back on. The skewer side, the lever side actually goes opposite side of the cassette. I'm going to put our cone spring back on, put our nut back on. Now we'll just reinstall this wheel back on the bike. To reinstall the wheel, it's going to drop the chain down a little bit, let it wrap onto the cassette, pull our derailleur back just a little bit, and it's actually going to just slide up in place right on. We're going to snug this nut down to the point where the skewer will engage. Tighten it up. Make sure it shifts properly. And then finally, you want to flip your lever back down on your brake. That way you have brakes when you get on your bike. Chris in Boise, how to remove and reinstall a Shimano cassette.